This slide demonstrates the relative concentrations of sodium-potassium both in the intracellular and extracellular fluid compartments. The numbers that are listed here are simply for general reference and do not need to be memorized. The main point I want to focus on with this diagram is to indicate that sodium is much more concentrated in extracellular fluid and potassium is much more concentrated in intracellular fluid. These gradients set the foundation for all cellular processes. These gradients are maintained by the constitutive activity of the sodium-potassium pump. They are also responsible for creating the gradients necessary for secondary active transport. They also underlie the ability to maintain proper cell volume regulation. And we'll also see that the maintenance of resting membrane potential is based on the gradients as they are. Finally, these gradients will serve as the basis for being able to develop electrical signaling. The constitutive properties of a cell membrane are its inherent properties that are continuously active. They control what substances enter and leave the cell, and thereby provide a framework that maintains the ion gradients across the cell membrane. Recall that the constitutive properties include the barrier function of the phospholipid membrane, embedded transport proteins. Pertinent to our discussion here is the sodium-potassium ATPase pump, as well as the selective permeability. Once again, pertinent to our discussion will be leak channels for sodium and potassium. Let's take a setting where we have a solution with both sodium and potassium ions present. We then encase some of this fluid within the cell membrane, and then insert sodium-potassium pump, which is going to transport 3 sodium ions out and 2 potassium ions in. Once again, sodium is more concentrated outside the cell and potassium is more concentrated inside the cell. As a result of more sodium ions leaving, what we'll see is the inside of the cell has a negative charge along the inside of the membrane compared to the outside. Recall that sodium-potassium pumps are always active, and they'll play an essential constitutive role in maintaining these gradients. We also have our leak channels that are constitutively open. I've drawn here potassium leak channels and sodium leak channels. There are many more potassium leak channels drawn in this picture than sodium leak channels, and this reflects the fact that our membrane is much more permeable to potassium than sodium at rest. This is allowing much more potassium to leave and a smaller amount of sodium to enter. This actually is the primary generator of our resting membrane potential, creating a much more negative interior to the membrane compared to the outside. Once again, we have the constitutive activity of our sodium-potassium pumps helping to maintain these gradients. Recall from our earlier discussions that the direction of diffusion of uncharged particles is determined by its concentration gradient. Diffusion will always occur down a concentration or chemical gradient. When we consider the movement of ions across the membrane, we now have to include the fact that these have an electrical charge. So we have to consider the electrical charge as well as the chemical gradient. One way to consider this is to recall the dictum that like charges repel and opposite charges attract. This will help us in determining the direction of electrical gradients. In this particular picture, I've drawn the cell membrane in red. This signifies that the inside of the cell membrane is negative compared to the outside, and the circles represent positively charged cations. On the left, the cation is more concentrated inside the cell, so its chemical gradient is directed outward. Because this is a positively charged ion, the inside of the membrane, being negative, will tend to attract the positively charged ion, or work to keep those positively charged molecules that are within the cell inside. This is indicated by the direction of the arrow which I've drawn to indicate the electrical gradient. The electrochemical gradient is simply taking the net effect of these two forces. In this instance, the electrochemical force would be slightly directed outward. In the figure on the right, we have the concentration greater outside the cell than inside the cell. In this case, the chemical gradient is directed inward, and our electrical gradient is also directed into the cell. As a result, we see a strong electrochemical gradient directed into the cell. What we'll find is that the direction of movement of an ion will be dictated by this electrochemical gradient. Let's take a cell and say that it's only permeable to potassium. Here we've drawn the relative concentrations of a normal cell with intracellular fluid compared to the extracellular fluid. So we have a chemical gradient which is directed outward. As potassium moves outward, it takes with it positive charges, leaving the inside of the cell negative. Now that the inside of the cell membrane is negative, we are created an electrical force which will be directed into the cell. As potassium continues to leave the cell, the electrical force will increase in size. Eventually, it will become a magnitude that will exactly oppose the chemical force. So here, if we have the electrical force exactly opposing the chemical force, we have an electrochemical gradient of 0. Consider a cell that's only permeable to sodium. Once again, we've set up our concentrations to what they are within our body. In this case, the chemical gradient for sodium is directed inward, so sodium will move inward. It will take positive charges with it, making the inside of the cell membrane more positive. As a result of this positive charge developing on the inside of the membrane, an electrical gradient will develop which will tend to oppose further movement of sodium. As sodium continues to move down its chemical gradient, the electrical gradient will increase in size until it exactly opposes the chemical gradient. This will prohibit any further net movement of sodium into the cell. At this point, the electrochemical gradient for sodium is 0. So in both of these examples, we've demonstrated the point at which the electrical gradient exactly opposes the chemical gradient for each one of these ions. At that point at which the electrical gradient exactly opposes the chemical gradient, the magnitude of electrical potential is called the equilibrium potential. The equilibrium potential can be calculated by using the Nernst equation. The Nernst equation uses the concentration of an ion inside the cell and outside, along with the charge of that ion to determine its equilibrium potential. For our class, we'll never use any of these formulas that I provide you to do any type of calculation. I want you to understand these formulas conceptually. I want you to understand the equilibrium potential is primarily a result of the relative concentration gradient of the ion on either side of the membrane. If we use these numbers I provided you, the equilibrium potential for potassium would be approximately negative 92.6 millivolts, and the equilibrium potential for sodium would be approximately positive 60 millivolts. Once again, these numbers are for general purposes, not for using exact calculations. In fact, if you look at other sources, you may find that the equilibrium potential for these ions are listed differently. And that's because they may be using slightly different concentrations of extracellular and intracellular values for each of these ions. So to reiterate, the equilibrium potential is in reference to only one ion. The equilibrium potential represents the electrical force that exactly counterbalances the chemical force or chemical gradient of a specific ion. Another way to say this is that the equilibrium potential is the membrane voltage at which that particular ion has no net electrochemical driving force. For sodium, we said it was positive 60 millivolts, and for potassium, it's negative 92.6 millivolts.